Hi guys and gals and kittens, and welcome to the AINIRO Magic Show. So in this video I'm going to be creating an AGI chatbot for you. What is AGI chatbots? Well, basically AI means artificial intelligence. AGI means artificial general intelligence. Whether or not you believe this is AGI or not is in general besides the point. The point is that this chatbot is going to be having an opposable thumb, allowing it to actually reach out into the world and do useful things. Something which is a prerequisite for the human cognitive evolution, since it allowed us to use tools and create tools and manufacture tools. So anyways, the first thing I'm going to be needing is I'm going to go to manage, I'm going to go to plugins, and then I'm going to be installing the OpenAI plugin. Why? Because it contains a couple of actions that I want to use as AI functions. Then I'm going to go to create, choose chatbot wizard. Then I'm going to be writing www.billionaire.org. Then I'm going to be scraping only to actually one page. I'm going to be using Frank, Dynamic Super Products and Sales Executive. Of course, at this point, I could scrape 1,000 pages, but that would take simply way too long time. So I'm going to be scraping simply one page, this particular point in time. So now I do have, when this process is done, I actually do have an AI type or a model that I can query with a RAG and a VSS database that will actually try to help me, that will guide me through the process of becoming a member of Billionaire's organization with the goal of reducing CO2 emissions by 1 billion metric tons by 2030. And I can already copy the HTML here. Let's choose some green coloring here, right, to make it look slightly more, I don't know, green. And ask about AI CO2 reducer, right? Copy HTML, close, go to create, go to hyper-ID, etc., etc., etc. www create billion.html here. I guess I called it billion. Let me change that to billion. And then let's create a default HTML landing page for Billionaire, an organization dedicated to reducing CO2 emissions by 1 billion metric tons by 2030. Use some nice coloring and design, emphasizing green technology and green investments. Let's see what OpenAI comes up with here. And remember, we do have the embed script on our clipboard now. So once this is done, all we got to do is actually to go down here and paste in the embed script. Save the file, open it in a different tab here, which point you will see we already have an AI chatbot. We can ask it, what is Billionaire, right? At which point it's going to use its RAG database to actually answer this question intelligently based upon the information found at Billionaire's website. And as you can see, it can even display images, and it can even supply you with follow-up questions, and it adequately explains what Billionaire actually is. Now, this is an AI chatbot. What we want to do now is to turn it into an AGI chatbot, which basically means that the AI chatbot has an opposable thumb and can actually do stuff. So what do we want this particular AI chatbot to be actually able to do? Well, first, we want to be able to store contacts. In order to do that, we need a database. So we're going to create a database. We're just going to call it AGI test, and then we're going to click edit on this particular database afterwards. That brings us to SQL Studio, allowing us to create a new table in this database where we can add two fields: name, column type text, not nullable, add, and then we want to add email, column type, text, not nullable, add. Now we have a simple database. At this point, we can go to create endpoint generator, we can choose this database, and then we can click generate endpoints. Now we have HTTP CRUD API endpoints wrapping this particular database. However, we actually did it wrong. We need to remove authentication and authorization. Now I need to emphasize that this is going to be a publicly exposed AI chatbot, and then we need to overwrite. And I wouldn't do this in a publicly exposed database. Why? Because it allows any schmuck with access to your AI chatbot to actually send emails to random people on the internet. So I'm going to be deleting this AI chatbot when I'm done with this video before I upload it. However, here you see the code that the system automatically generated for us. And at this point, we can already invoke this code function F5 on Mac or F5 on Windows. Thomas at gaiasol.com. Let's call him Thomas Hansen. Now we inserted one record into our database. We can now get it by invoking the .get.hl file, at which point you will see it returns Thomas Hansen. We can keep on posting contacts. John Doe, John at doe.com, at which point when we're done, we invoke the get HTTP endpoint, at which point it's going to be returning John. However, we want to have this particular functionality inside of our AI chatbot. So what we are going to be doing now is that if you hover over the hyperlambda file, you will see it says copy as AI function. What we want to do, we want to copy this guy, contacts.get.hl. Then we want to open a different tab, machine learning, in a different browser tab here. Then we go to training data, we choose our billionaire org model, we choose add, and then if you remember our endpoint, it gets contacts, okay? Gets lists contacts, right? And here you can see read endpoint with paging, or actually let's call it the read contacts. Now if we save this guy, we go back to types, we choose our billionaire model, we click vectorize, and we wait for the process to be done, at which point we can close this guy. We can actually ask the chatbot to list all contacts, at which point the AI chatbot is actually going to return contacts from our database that we just inserted like a couple of minutes ago. So as you can see here now, it's got Thomas Hansen, it's got John Doe. We can continue with this too by choosing the post endpoint, which actually is the create HTTP endpoint. Then we can go to training data, we can choose type, billionaire, add, create a new contact. Then we can paste in this guy. We can click save, we can go back to types, we can re-vectorize the billionaire model, click close when this process is done, and say I want to create a new contact. At which point it is actually going to ask us for the name and email address for the new contact. So let's insert Jane Howdy, Jane at howdy.com now. At which point it's actually going to be inserting into the database. So now if we go back and we ask it to list all contacts, then it's actually got Jane in the database at this point too, in addition to John Doe and Thomas Hansen. So we now have the ability to store and persist data from within our AI chatbot. What we now need is the ability to send these contacts emails. Now, in order to do that, we're going to have to be creating our own AI workflow, which becomes the foundation for an AI function. We are going to do this completely without coding. Please realize that so far I haven't manually created a single line of code. Now let's create a new hyperlambda file. Let's call it send email.hl. Then we want to provide a description for our hyperlambda file. Sends an email to the specified recipient with the specified subject and body. Body can be marked down and will be automatically transformed into HTML. All arguments are mandatory. If the user don't provide you with all arguments, then ask the user what values to use. Add name, string, add email, string, add subject, string, add body, string, and let me just verify name, email, subject, body, okay. Now, what we want to do here, we want to go up in the filter text box, write markdown, which point our toolbox will show that we have a markdown to HTML toolbox action here, where we can transform the incoming body into HTML. So now we've transformed the incoming markdown to HTML. What we want to do now is to actually send the email. So let's choose the email action. Let's verify it's got the correct name, email, it's got the correct subject, but it does not have the correct body, because now we want to use the result of our markdown to HTML invocation here now. And then we all got to do is click OK, click the save button, then we go back to our machine learning model, and then we go to training data, we choose our type. And by the way, before we leave this page, we need to click the flash icon here. Then we add a new training snippet, and we give it the prompt of send an email. And then we just paste in our function invocation here. We save it, we go back to our types, we re-vectorize the type like this, and then we click close. Now, we want to add one more additional AI function. Remember how we installed the OpenAI plugin initially in the video? Well, we want to add, we want to go to training data. Then we want to choose our type here now, and we want to add a function. Now, this is the same process as adding a function from HyperID, except it's just a different way to install it. Now I want to have the ability to scrape a URL. Scrape a URL. Now when I click save, I click close, and I click types, and I click vectorize on billionaire.org here. Now all of a sudden the AI chatbot has the ability to create items into my contacts database. It's got the ability to read items from my contacts database. I didn't implement support for update or delete. However, it's got the ability to scrape any URL, and it's got the ability to send an email. So it's got these 4 actions that it can actually perform. So now if I ask it, scrape www.hubspot.com and create a sales pitch email. Create a short sales pitch email for HubSpot's products. Let's see what it comes up with. So now it's scraping HubSpot.com. Now it's going to create a sales pitch email trying to sell HubSpot's products. Right? As you can see here, transform your business with blah, blah, body, their recipient name, blah, blah. Are you looking to seamlessly, blah, blah, blah. It's basically a sales pitch. So, I want to send an email. Let's see now what it comes back with. Okay, now it asks me for recipient's name, email address, subject, and body. Okay, I want you to use the subject and body you created as you scraped HubSpot. And I actually look up a contact with a name containing Thomas. Okay, so now let's see if it found Thomas. Okay, now we have a name and we have an email address. Then we want it, I want you to use the subject and body you created as you scraped HubSpot. I want you to send the email to Thomas, and I want you to sign the email with, let's say my name is Jane, right? Let's see now what it comes up with. I will send the email to Thomas Hansen with the subject and body provided and sign the email with Jane. Hopefully now it is going to actually successfully send me an email, and now I gotta blur my screen because I want to show you the email it just sent.
First I have to
and let's see if I got the email now. And as you can see here now, the AI chatbot basically inserted a new record into my contacts table in my AGI test database. Then it was able to extract that name and email, and then it was able to scrape HubSpot.com and send a sales pitch based upon HubSpot.com's landing page to my email address, transmitting it as HTML. So, is this AGI? Well, it is an opposable thumb. I asked ChatGPT whether or not it believed that this was AGI or not. And actually it came back and it told me that it believed sincerely it was a large prerequisite for achieving AGI. Does it fulfill the original definition of AGI as published by the scientific community? No, but yet again, ChatGPT itself declared that it was definitely a big step towards achieving AGI, because AGI basically means that you have an AI that is capable of doing everything that a human being is capable of doing. That is what artificial general intelligence implies. And that sentence implies that in order to create AGI, you need to have an AI chatbot that is actually capable of doing something. You need the AI to have a quote-unquote opposable thumb, implying it has the ability to actually reach out into the world and do things. This AI chatbot can definitely do things, something I believe should be fairly obvious at this particular point in time.
So you have these amazing tools, ChatGPT, for instance, or Claude, or similar types of models, AI models, that can take as input text, and then they can generate text as a response. That's why they're called generative pre-trained transformers, or LLMs, large language models, because they act upon language as input and generate language as output. Now, this is a fundamental change in the way we do computing, because previously we had to use extremely formal language to interact with the computer. We software developers refers to this formal language as programming languages, and previously this was the only type of language that the computer could understand. Today we can actually transmit, using ChatGPT and Claude and these AI models, we can actually transmit words, natural language, language we as a species have been using for hundreds and thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands of years to communicate with each other. And we can take this language and we can provide it to the machine. And the machine can somehow magically, semantically understand what we are communicating to it and respond with a response back to us. This allows us to go to ChatGPT and ask it questions such as, for instance, who was Albert Einstein? Create a 2-paragraph summary. And ChatGPT will actually generate a fairly accurate answer. Every now and then it will have some AI hallucinations, but in general it is way more accurate than probably 99.9% of the world when it comes to question asking related to Albert Einstein, which means that it already outperforms 99.9% of the world. And if you look at it in a broad sense, it already outperforms 100% of every single human being. Because regardless of whether or not you have a PhD in physics, I can guarantee you that ChatGPT knows the history of McDonald's and Coca-Cola way better than you. So even though you can, as a single individual, find particular points within ChatGPT where it is not capable of answering that particular question equally correct and equally good as you are capable of doing, it can also answer a bajillion different questions, where probably most of the questions it is answering would be more accurate than the way you would be capable of answering these same questions. So already at this point it could be argued that ChatGPT actually is a general artificial intelligence. So we already have AGI. However, the AGI definition has a couple of primary crucial words in it, which is that it needs to have an AI that is capable of doing things, executing things. Basically, it needs an opposable thumb that it can use to reach out into the world and somehow modify the world the way it sees it. And we know for a fact that the human cognitive revolution or evolution, or whatever you want to refer to it as, is actually extremely dependent upon having an opposable thumb. The opposable thumb, even if you compare our thumb to monkeys, and their ability to grasp things. Our opposable thumb is completely unique within the animal kingdom in regards to its flexibility and its ability to, with extreme nuances and extreme finesse, reach out into things and grab them and modify them somehow. This resulted in that we were given, by, you might argue, a freak accident through evolution, the ability to actually create tools. Now, our ability to create tools resulted in that we would be able to modify our environment to a much larger extent than any previous animals having lived through the entirety of Earth's existence, at least as far as we know, for the record. And this changed our minds. Because the more complex tools we were able to create, the more complex our minds became. So, for instance, my primary example of that is how we created a pen and literacy and the written language to be able to transmit ideas from one human being to another human being across time and space. Allowing, for instance, some philosopher in Greece 2,500 years ago to write down his ideas, for then to later having me reading his ideas 2,500 years later on the other side of the earth. Without this capacity, I wouldn't have been able to know who Socrates even was. But with the capacity to write and read, all of a sudden we had the ability to transmit ideas across time and space. Later this evolved into the printing press, which allowed us to mass produce the written word. That later resulted in what we now today refer to as the Enlightenment, that were the foundation basically for the scientific revolution we see today, which again became the primary reasons why we were cognitively capable of creating super complex systems such as computers and ChatGPT. And it all started with one thing, one simple thing: the opposable thumb. You take away the opposable thumb from human evolution, and we're basically hairless monkeys. Thank you for watching.